Stand by. Is this thing on?
Yes, Dan.
Oh, hello.
You're listening to Old News with Dan and Carrie.
This just in.
Breaking news to report.
We are live.
Old newscasters
Can we just say former?
Sure. Former newscasters reunite behind the mic after more than 20 years.
Old news is good news.
Stay tuned. Welcome back to Old News with Dan and Carrie. I am Carrie, and that's Dan. And today we continue our conversation with Bob Miller.
It's really been fascinating so far, hasn't it, Carrie? We've heard
It
about
has.
kind of his philosophy in dealing with business, and he's really taken a lot of chances over the years, a lot of risks, and it's turned out pretty well because of those philosophies and his kind of face-to-face idea. But there's so much more to learn about Bob. What else are we going to hear about?
We're going to hear about him living in Ireland and why that became a dream of his, plus some of his other bucket list items. So stay tuned.
Were you one of the people who, when we were at 27, we did these things called our towns, where we'd go out and do a whole live in a whole community? Was that you who kind of helped?
That was coming back. I was running the place when that wasn't in my smash days. That was the return.
But
What
were you one of the people who
happened
kind of made that
was,
happen?
Yeah, that was again wearing the marketing hat, to go to Sun Prairie or Spring Green or Baraboo and feature them. They owned KOW for the week and got to show off their community. And we had that, because we had built those incredible news sets with the glass window.
Yeah.
And the bat window, as I heard. Yes.
And the staged scenes in the back sometimes. Here, take this tape.
Yeah.
Do something.
Or do a cartwheel for the
we had
Christmas
that
show.
portable. Yeah, we had that portable news set that looked just like the real news set that we'd cart all around. And, after a time, it kind of, as everything does, wore up. But for a while, it was great.
It was pretty cutting edge
Yeah,
back
those
then,
were
it
nice.
seemed like.
Yeah, it was a great way to show off the community.
And you kind of took that then the next step, and you went to Discover Media Works for a little while too, who does that, they do the whole Discover Wisconsin programming and all of that.
So what happened there was a group of us bought KOW and all the ABC, the sister stations, and under Shockley Communications moniker.
SCC.
And I was one of the investors in that and got to run KOW. It was one of the perks of being an investor, because it was truly my dream job, which sidebar takes me back to that 22-year-old reporter in the newsroom having a tantrum about any monkey can run the TV station. Well, when that, because it was pretty secret about us getting the stations, and really secret about me because I was running Dynatech at the time. And I got at least 3 letters and or telephone calls from people who remembered that outburst in that newsroom.
Really?
And they said, "So how do you like being part of the zoo now, ape man?" I absolutely detest banana. It's the only food I hate. And somebody knew that and the story. Said, "So you can start eating bananas now, Bob, because since you're a monkey." And,
my gosh.
Yeah, my friends keep me humble.
Was it a little more difficult than you had initially thought at age 22 to run a station?
Absolutely. Because there were good people that deserved that job as much, if not more, than I, who had paid their dues, like my best man in my wedding, Ken Simmons, who's coming to see me now. And so I was very fortunate. Not everyone was like, "Oh, geez, he was doing the computer stuff. He's done a lot, but this is a whole different ball game." But people gave me a shot, and we turned it. It was fun, and as you know, you were part of that magic that was created. KOW worked hard to be noticed. ABC would give us a hit show every once in a while, a movie on Sunday night, but the news, it was always, we were trying to catch up with the other stations and stuff. But during that time, and then with the advent of, we were one of the first high definition television stations in the United States. Certainly in the Midwest, we were the first. We were one of 8 only.
Hmm.
For KOW, the place where I had to sneak film from Mark Keane, is now one of the first HD TV. And then, God bless, and we won't get into that. You guys say that for a weather person, but the Doppler Wars. You were there for
Oh
the
yeah.
Doppler
Oh,
Wars.
Yeah.
yeah.
Whose was biggest? Who had the biggest? The best.
Yeah.
So no, I'm so proud the accomplishments, and the two of you were, and that's where, I don't mean to be cornball about this, but I was so thrilled when I saw old news pop up. I'm a big podcast listener, and it was music. You two have been a team, a very good team. Haven't aged a bit,
Well, I don't know
which
about that, but
disgusts me.
thanks.
Everybody
No, I do.
lies.
Yeah, you guys are just, so you were a big part of that. In all sincerity, that was
Uh,
because you were those workhorses at 4 a.m. or 3 a.m.
or 2 or 12:30 if we didn't
Yeah,
have a producer at the time.
yeah,
Well, nice of
exactly.
you to say,
So
and but
yeah,
also it took leadership from people like yourself and
Mhm.
Todd Pritchard and Sandy and so many of the people who were managing not just news but the station like yourself to have that foresight to I mean we were the first morning show at Channel 27. Obviously Channel
Mhm.
3 had one
yeah,
already. We were trying to catch up a little bit on that, but you guys made it happen. And my memory of being at the station at that time was a lot of money was spent on upgrading things which was
oh
kind of
yeah,
unheard of in television at the time, it
yeah,
seems like, because we got a new, like you said, the glass studio and an extra studio for Fox, and the morning show started, and I think we started other newscasts too, and it was pretty amazing that that was being invested into the TV station. And as you mentioned before, I mean, we didn't see a ton of you because you were the station manager or the general manager, but
mhm,
you would be seen. You'd come through the newsroom and you did show
Mhm.
interest because probably, like you said, you liked journalism, but
Mhm.
that meant a lot to people like us who are just, like you said, in the trenches trying to make get stuff on the air. So
yeah.
thank you for that.
Yeah,
And-
you
I
were
called it coffee
definitely
cup
a
management.
presence. Mhm.
Yeah, I managed by in the morning carrying a coffee cup around and
yeah.
just Dan, what's happening? What's
Yep.
meeting? So what
Yep.
happened, and it's the same now and it was then, it's you either get bigger and you eat or you get eaten. And Shockley, the goal of Shockley Communications was we wanted to get bigger. So as you're shopping for more TV stations, and we did pick up some stations along the way. We started
Yeah.
some in Minnesota and the like,
Mm.
but Shockley kept running into this Quincy media out of Quincy,
Yep.
Mm.
Illinois.
Yep.
Mhm.
Same kind of deal, same size and everything. And it was like, geez, rather than compete with one another, which one of us might. So we sold to Quincy. And
Mm.
one of the requirements was I had to stay. They weren't dumb about, you know, as they would say, we paid way too much for this station. We wanted the proof that you weren't making this up and you could deliver. So I was supposed to stay there for 3 years,
Mm.
continue to be the GM to prove that everything was on the up and up, which it was. And almost made it that 3 years, but it was not as fun working for somebody again
Mm.
as it was
Yep.
being my own boss.
Mhm. Right.
And they had a very different way. So as the media business goes, there wasn't enough room in town for 2 sheriffs.
Yeah.
So they had bigger pockets than me. So I stepped away and thought I was going
Mm.
to retire. But, I did not want to work till I died.
Mm.
Oh,
And I was wrong. I was too young. I was only 58 or so. No, I
Mm.
forget what I was, but
oh, that is
too
very
young.
young.
And I
That's
got
very young.
bored. Yeah, very, very young. And to retire. And so we had done Discover Wisconsin on KOW. I became
Mhm.
friends with Mark Rose, and it was a family business. Mark and his brother was the talent, Mark was the salesman, and their sister was the audio and the computer person. And when their dad died, then they decided they didn't want to battle one another over who. So the two siblings sold it all to Mark, and Mark was good at selling, but didn't want to be the management guy. So he asked if I'd come on board, and they were in Milwaukee at the time. So I
Yeah.
said, I'll do it for a month as a
Hmm.
consultant. And it ended up, I don't know how many years, 3 or 4 years. And I couldn't do the drive to Milwaukee, got to
Oh.
me. So Mark said, fine, move it to Madison. And, I was able to get quite a few of the employees to come to Madison. We built a
Hmm.
brand new facility, and they still seem to be humming along, and
Still doing
that
it.
was great.
Still doing it.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
how did you then end up over at the Overture Center as the director of major gifts? Because that
Yeah,
seems
that
kind of like
was
a pivot.
Hmm.
yeah, it was. It's this bucket list. I truly have had a bucket list since I was a kid of dreams I did. And one of my career dreams was I never worked downtown. And I love Madison's downtown. I
Hmm.
really loved it.
Yeah.
My career was always on the far west side in yuppie land.
Hmm.
And I wanted to work down there. And so they were going through some trials and tribulations. If you remember, Paul Soglin was for the
Yep.
umpteenth time the mayor of Madison and was
Yeah.
fighting Overture and kind of wanted, and it was getting, and it's still to this day the greatest personal gift that Jerry Fauci gave
Mm.
in the performing arts in the United States. After all these years, it's still the
That's
largest sum
beautiful.
of money,
Hmm.
240 million.
And a great place to
So
go.
they approached me to come down there, and so I got to tick that off and enjoyed it. I went to everything at Overture. We always had
Oh
tickets.
yeah.
Hopefully, you benefited at the TV station. We always had season tickets for things,
Yeah,
and
I went a few
so
times.
I like doing that. And then what happened to end the career was going back. It's a small world, but to
Hmm.
Terry Kelly. I was meanwhile the mayor of Monona, and the nature center is in Monona. The city owns the Aldo Leopold Nature Center. Terry Kelly was chairman of the board from its beginnings, and they lost their longtime CEO, Kath Khan.
Yeah.
And so Terry tapped me on for like the third time in my career. Bob, you know, we always had an interesting
I need you,
relationship,
Bob.
but
Yeah.
yeah. So, and it's, and it wasn't a conflict of interest. I took it as being, this is great. The city knows what's going on at the nature center. Nature center can communicate directly to the city by being there. So I was there, but of all the jobs I had, perhaps the most difficult was my last one.
Really?
Nonprofit work in Madison
Oh.
is hard. And
Hmm.
Overture was that to a degree, but that was a very large, sophisticated operation. But
Hmm.
the joke that there's 600 nonprofits in Dane County is not a joke. I mean,
Yeah.
Hmm.
Probably more than
there's
that
a
now.
lot.
Yeah.
And what made
Yeah.
you step into being mayor? What made you want to get into politics and
Oh,
serve in that way?
so the deal was with Donna, I never traveled. I'd never been on an airplane until I graduated from college. And so now I'm working in Green Bay and start traveling with the Packers. And those were my first airplane rides ever,
Mm.
to be with the Packers, And so,
Mhm.
and I'm like, oh, this is cool. And then I get to Dynatech, and color graphics, and I'm flying around the United States with color graphics. Then I become president of New Star, and most of our customers were international. So now I'm 26, 30 weeks a year overseas somewhere. So from never going anywhere to I've been in just about every country that exists
Hmm.
in the world. Not so much South America, but the rest of the world, I've been just about everywhere. And so I was raised by special parents, as many of us have had. And one thing I learned about them is to really pay it forward. My parents had no money. My mother was a minister and a homemaker. My father was a builder, but they just gave of their time and self and donated. So I always wanted to do that, but I couldn't, because I couldn't. If you're going to have a meeting, I couldn't promise I'd be there. I might be in Yugoslavia that day or
Hmm.
whatever.
Hmm.
And so I couldn't do things like that. And then when I got the TV station deal, then it was one, important to be community involved. And
Hmm.
two, I could now try to make up for all those years of not giving back to society and to the people. So I probably went overboard, when I was looking at, I think 21 organizations I've chaired in both in Ireland and back in the States. And it's just, I don't say no well when asked to help. And if I can help, I try to do the best I can. And with politics, I always wish that was one my bucket list. It wasn't on my bucket list because I didn't know how you even did that.
Yeah.
But if I could do college all over again, I would have got my butt in that Capitol and got an internship and learned the ropes. I would have loved nothing more than, I don't know where it could have gone, but to have done more. So the one thing I could do was in Monona. And it actually was a case, got to be delicate how to say this one, but my predecessor was stepping down to run for state legislature. And as he had been, his predecessor kind of handpicked him. This mayor kind of said, Bob, we can't let this guy who wants that job his whole life be the mayor. You got to do it. We can't let him do it. And I kind of agreed. So it was kind of one, not so much that I wanted to be mayor. I just didn't want the other guy to be the mayor. And it turned out to be not at all that case. Once I became mayor, I absolutely loved it. And again, I think, Monona is only 3.5 square miles. That's all it is and all it can ever be.
Oh.
Yeah.
Not all the land that Sun Prairie and DeForest and Fitchburg has. So the only way for Monona to survive is to redevelop and go vertical. So that was a big focus, and we did some amazing developments that I'm still to this very minute so proud of there. And it was a great job. And still, more people call me Mayor Bob than they call me Bob back there.
More than call you Bad Bob.
And Bad Bob, just Shockley. And there it was, we didn't have an office. The mayor, I gave up the office because they needed space. So my office was actually the farmer's market on Sundays mornings. So I would set up an office truly and advertise. And when we started our WVMO radio station there, I would do an hour radio show from the mayor's office at the farmer's market.
Well, you said so Bad Bob, Mayor Bob, and I saw an article that you sent me where they called you TV Bob, and that was an article in Ireland. So is that just because, did they call you TV Bob because they knew you worked in TV or what?
No, that was specifically. So what happened with it? It's weird. I've had just, life is magical. So I'm here in Ireland. They call people who weren't born and raised in Ireland blow-ins. So I am a true blow-in. I have no Irish blood, no ties at all, but they have really been nice to me. So when COVID hit, there was a TV celebrity. His name was Hector O'Hachigan, an Irish name. And Hector is like Irish Charles Kuralt when he used to go on the road.
Oh, yeah.
Or the guy who does it now on MSNBC, the people who travel and do these things. And it was all international. Hector would only go around, and he does it for the Irish language, the Gaelic channel. And he's a big celebrity. I'd never heard of him, didn't know who he was. COVID hits, he can't go and do his story. That's how he makes his living. He's kind of like the travel guy. Does the famous Steve Irwin. No, not Steve, whatever that guy who travels all the time. So Hector doing this, and apparently he put out an announcement that he wanted to do a story because Ireland's changing. It's not all red hair, young lasses and beer drinking in the pubs. It's ethnically blending. There is a lot of dark skin in Ireland now, and it's great stuff. And Hector had this belief that the Irish don't appreciate their own country, and that there's people who are moving to Ireland, like myself, who are desperate. It's very difficult for me to live in Ireland to get permission every year. It's just expensive and impossible almost, but I pulled it off 8 years. And so Hector announced that he wanted to do a series because he couldn't travel on Ireland. and find out who is New Ireland, who are the people. So I guess he put a casting call out, and someone anonymously nominated me. So I
Huh.
get a call from a producer one day at Christmas, and I couldn't go anywhere because COVID. And they said, we were told that you're an interesting guy who moved to
Mhm.
Ireland and stuff. And would you audition to be on this thing? And I'm like, what, so it was a 1 minute video in front of the Christmas tree introducing myself. And the next thing, they had hundreds and hundreds, and I never knew who nominated me. But
Hmm.
all of a sudden they said, we'd like you to be on. So
Hmm.
that news story, TV Bob, was it's equivalent of ABC or CBS or a
Sure.
network doing this story.
Mm-hmm.
So the newspapers all picked up on it. Out here in the middle of nowhere is this American, and Hector's going to do a story. And you know how news works. You give a minute 30, 90 seconds is a long story in news. I think they gave 7 minutes, and he
Whoa.
drove out, and I took
Well,
him
you're kind of
along
a
to
big
down to the
deal.
sea. No, not at all, not at all. It was fun, and we had fun. He made me sing in Irish, and so that's what the TV Bob came up with, just
Uh,
because
That's
that's what I
interesting.
did for my
and you
career.
said
So
20 years ago or so, you on a whim bought that place. What made
yeah.
you buy the place?
Yeah.
So the checklist was, I was traveling with Dynatech everywhere and just
Mm.
got blown away because right now there's some people having a great time talking in Czech Republic and in China, and there's good people and there's neat things, and we never think outside of our downtown Madison at times or village in Ireland, what goes on. And so I was just enamored by how cool the people I met in my career. And I wanted to live somewhere else. I
Mm.
love America. I'm a proud American. Some people, I've been here 8 years now. So before any of these candidates were running, so it's not, and I'm going to go back to America at some
Mm-hmm.
point in time, a full time. And my wife had traveled for school and vacations a lot.
Mm.
So she was open to the idea. I said, would you be willing to live somewhere else for a year? And she said, sure. And
Mm.
so I had an office in Dublin for Dynatech, and I loved going there.
Oh.
And so Ireland came. So my requirements on where to live were, one, I grew up in the North Woods of Wisconsin with no one around, so it had to be in the country. I don't
Mm-hmm.
want a city,
Mm-hmm.
so in the country. Number two is I'm too old to learn Italian or French. They have to speak English, and in Ireland they kind of speak English. And
Mm-hmm.
three, I'm an extrovert who doesn't shut up. Pam is an introvert who never wants to say a word. Just leave her alone, let her go hill walking and read her books. So we both had to be happy. Uh, Four, I had grown up on water. We lived on Lake Monona and Madison,
Mm.
so I'd always been on water, but I'd never been on the sea. So if I could be by the sea, it would be a plus. And number five, I like beer. So
Yeah.
guess what country won? So Ireland won. Checked off all the boxes.
Well, and you
As
said
if
it's hard to stay there year after year. That was one of my questions are you a dual citizen or you said you have to apply every year to stay there?
Yeah, yeah. It's called the Stamp Zero. And it's an expensive, laborious. I'm going through it right now. We
Mm.
moved in July, so my year in Ireland always starts in July. So I have to keep track of all my expenses. So when I buy that beer, I have
Mm.
to keep a receipt for that. I
Oh.
have to do a spreadsheet to give the government. First, I have to give it to a special accountant in
Mm.
Cork City that does an audit of everything. And the reason I think they've never really explained is they want to make sure I don't go on welfare. If I have a stroke, that the
Oh.
government doesn't have to support me. But
Mm.
you can do that a lot simpler ways than what they're doing it here. And I'm very frustrated about it.
Mm.
But we have all these things. I have to give my marriage license. Pam has her maiden name, so that we are truly married. The first year, I don't have to do this now, but I had to get a letter from the police chief of Monona that I wasn't escaping for some political corruption in Monona.
huh,
I go,
wow.
I wish. And
You're
the
on the
big one,
lam.
though, is,
Yeah.
if you get this visa, which we've gotten for 8 years, you're not allowed to work. You're not allowed to own a business,
Mm.
but you have to have an income of 55,000 each. So Pam and I each have to have $110,000 income every year. So how do you get an
How's
income
that
if you don't
supposed to work?
or have a business? Well, through a pension. So
Oh.
Pam worked for the state and has her state pension, but I had my own businesses and ran
Yeah.
businesses. So I live off investments,
Mm-hmm.
and they hate that here in Ireland because, investments go up and
Mm.
Yeah.
down and all over.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, you have to, and they boot people out. I know 2 Americans that got the boot because that money was too hard to get that a retired school teacher.
Oh.
And their neighbors did petitions and did everything.
Mm.
So
Wow.
I'll give you some breaking news.
Yes.
The other thing is they say none of this counts for citizenship here, that a stamp 0 visa is only that. It gives you 1 year. It's basically, there's only like 200 of them, I guess. So I'm fortunate to be able to get 1 or 2 of them, Pam and I. But they say you cannot ever become a citizen. And I really got mad this year and said, why not? So I hired a lawyer who said, there's nothing really. So I'm running it up the flagpole. We'll see what happens. It'll be
Oh.
2 years probably before I know, but I'm making a play for it.
Yeah.
You talked about your first TV job, but I want to ask you what your first ever job was, and then do you still have something you want to do beyond? I mean, you're one of those guys who doesn't seem to really sit still, Bob. You've got a lot going on, even in retirement. Is there something else you still want to do? But what was your first job, your first ever
My
job?
first job, I did the lawn thing when I was really young,
Yeah.
Yeah.
tourist hoses. But my first real job was in 1969 in Lac du Flambeau. We lived out in the woods and there was a supper club near us. And I got a job washing dishes manually in the sink. And
Yeah.
I'll never forget that because 69 is important because when Neil Armstrong walked on the moon, I was
Yeah.
washing dishes
Mm.
and they didn't have any mechanical dishwasher stuff. So I'm this little kid scrubbing these dishes, and then some waitress would come with the beet juice from the freezer from the salad bar and
Ew.
dump it in my sink. And
Ew.
it was the worst job. It was the worst because they had no water pressure and it would take like a half hour and everyone would be screaming, "Where are the dishes?" And
Oh my
I'd go home
gosh.
crying. And so that was my
So maybe the
first
first
job.
was the worst. Yeah.
First and the worst.
Yeah.
That's good. And
Yeah.
anything what's still on your bucket list? You're a bucket list guy. Do you still have something really big at the top of the bucket list?
Um, not really, because the age kind of puts its foot down. I'm healthy as a horse. I never biked in Wisconsin. Maybe once a year to go get a carton of milk at PDQ.
Mhm.
And here I'm over 8,000 miles, 9,000 miles of cycling
Wow.
here on mountains. And
Wow.
the peninsula, you can't see it, but this way is the southernmost tip of Ireland. And I bicycled from that southernmost tip to the northern 440 miles,
Oh my goodness.
the Mizzen to Malin run. So I do a lot of that. So I've
Mhm.
accomplished that. I've climbed the highest mountain in Ireland.
Mm.
I've done a lot of things that I'm real proud of and I'd still love to be involved with politics, but there's one of those, they call them roundy birthdays in Ireland when you get to a decade birthday.
Ah,
Yeah.
And I'm coming up to a big roundy birthday
a
next
roundy
year.
birthday.
And it's kind of like, I don't want to get, I still feel 35. I really do and want to be that. So, but I think I still have the bucket list, but big dreams, I kind of done everything in my life that I've wanted to do and will
What's still
continue
on
to
the
do.
bucket list? What's still in
Yeah.
that list?
Oh, and well, one that's coming. So, November, So I mentioned I still do a lot of volunteer. I was the head of 6 organizations. In May, I stepped down on all of them because I realized I'm not traveling like I thought I would be traveling.
Mm.
Living, it's easier to travel to Europe when you live in Europe. And I'm not doing that as much because I have so many obligations for
Mm.
organizations. So my next bucket list is I always wanted to sail across the ocean to
Oh,
go to the United States.
oh
So
my
in
gosh.
November, we're sailing out of Spain and going 16 days, wandering around the equator and end up in Orlando and then fly to Madison. I've got 2 grandchildren that mean that's my bucket list
Yeah.
Yeah.
is to get every minute, if you follow me and I welcome people, no politics. I don't care. I care, but
Hmm.
not on Facebook.
Hmm.
Facebook is my journal for
Mm.
friends and family to wonder what the hell is Bob doing in
Yeah. What
Ireland.
nation is he
So
in
I,
now?
I do
Yeah.
Yeah.
Facebook. Yeah, I do Facebook to just kind of show people the world.
Hmm.
So
Hmm.
That's
And now we
awesome.
have to get back to your Packers
Yeah,
story.
your funny
I always
Packer
oh,
ask
story.
like for a
all right.
bloopers,
Yeah,
like of
yeah,
the on-air people, a blooper or just a crazy story. And so you said you had a
yeah.
good one
So
for the
this is the
Packers.
crazy story, but important. I'm sure both of you through your journalism career, we've met a lot of amazing people and famous people. I've met presidents and popes, and very fortunate for the celebrity parts of the world, but they're all normal people to me.
Hmm.
I never got into hero worship ever. You know, everyone's normal. That can be respectful to a president or the Pope, but they're still people.
Hmm.
But there was one hero in my life, and that's being a little boy growing up in Wisconsin in the 60s, Bart Starr. I
Hmm.
absolutely just get teary eyed. He was the greatest human being I ever met, and I got to know him pretty well when I worked in Green Bay and traveled with the Packers. So, anyways, I'm 22 years old. I worked the night shift. These weird hours we had and had weird days off and worked till 11:30 at night. But then when they told me I was going to travel with the Packers, those flights would leave at 6 a.m. in the morning. So I would just be getting off work
Mm.
and get back. And when you're young, you like to sleep. Now I could go anytime because I don't sleep. But as a 22-year-old, so my first airplane trip to go to Atlanta with the Packers, I overslept. And I woke up and I had like 10 minutes for that plane to leave from Austin Straubel in Green Bay. And I'm just freaking. No shower, no toothpaste. Fortunately, I had my DOP kit in my duffel bag. Just ran out the door, got in the car. It was about 5 mile drive, raced. Thank God no cops were there. Went screaming in, and I look and the plane's still there, but there's no one there except Lee Remmel, who was the publicity director of the Packers, is standing on the step looking at his watch, and he knew who was all supposed to be in that plane. And he didn't know who I was, but he knew I was the Channel 5. And he said, get on this flight and you better not be any more trouble. So I get in and I'm basically in tears. And I sit down next to Norm Beaver or whatever, the photographer of the Packers. So I'm sitting there just shivering and like I knew would have been fired. I would have lost everything. And who, lo and behold, gets on last on the ship, on the plane? Bart and Jerry Starr. He was coach of the Packers at the time. And he walks down the aisle, and I am just going, and guess what seats he sits? He sits across the aisle from her. So there is truly my idol. I stink, I haven't bathed, and I'm just
Haven't brushed your
hiding.
teeth.
Yeah, I didn't brush my teeth, and there's Bart Starr, and we're going there, and I just, I didn't even look at him. I just cowered, and all of a sudden they served dinner, and on a charter like that, it's good food. So it's steak dinners on China and everything, and I'm watching because I haven't flown before. I don't know how this works, and so they bring the tray stand down, put the food down, and I'm still shaking. Don't screw up, Bob. Don't burp. Don't do whatever. And I'm cutting my steak. Honest to God, fork off it goes. Piece of steak with gravy on flies across the aisle on Bart Starr's khaki pants.
Oh
Greasy
no.
steak all over. And now I do start kind of crying. And Bart just kind of takes his napkin, dips it in his water glass, and kind of rubs some of his slime off his leg. And he turns to me and he goes, doesn't it just fry you that trying to eat on an airplane is almost impossible? I just
Aw.
hate it, don't you? And he didn't scream at me. And
Mm.
so that is the story that will go to my grave with me about my
Oh,
hero and what a class act he was.
that's so nice.
He probably remembered you after that too. What a way to be noticed, Bob.
Oh, he did. So I covered after the games, they'd have the press conference and they had been killed by some team. And I was married. I guess I was up there for KOW shooting for somebody. And I took Pam along because I had press passes. And I said, you can come into the press conference. And she's like, oh, I don't know. And so we go in, there's 30 guys all sitting there, and Bart's in, doesn't want to talk to them at all. And Pam's just standing at the back door, just trying to cower because, again, introverted. And Bart comes in, he goes, good afternoon, gentlemen and lady. So he acknowledged her there, and she just wanted to die. So he was a class act.
Great,
And
great story.
lady.
Great.
That
Yeah,
is.
what a couple. Hey Bob, we could talk forever and I
Yep.
wish we could. And honestly, I want you to
Yep.
promise us one thing. You will actually come back and talk to us again. I'd love to talk to you again after your sailing trip across the ocean
Yes.
or while you're
I'll be
doing it.
there. Yep, I'll be there. Well, I'm too cheap. You know me. When I was your boss, I was tight. No, so internet. I'm not buying the internet on the ship. And as they say in Ireland, instead of cheers, it's sláinte.
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 It's a date.
All
Well,
right.
thank you
Awesome.
so much. It's been an absolute pleasure to catch up with you, and we appreciate your time.
See you next time.
Thank you.
Thanks for tuning in to Old News with Dan and Carrie.
That's old news for now.
Join us next time.